We're sisters, best friends, and authors on a mission to help you stoke your creative fire and live the life of your dreams. We believe that purpose fuels passion and that creativity is your secret weapon for mass construction. There's never been a better time to bless the world with your dream realized. You're listening to The Kate and Abbie Show.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of The Kate and Abbie Show. This is episode 29, and we're super stoked to have you here today. It's we're filming this on the first day of NaNoWriMo.
Yeah, November 1st. It'll be like November 2nd when you listen to it.
Yeah, November 2nd. We're filming it on a very cold, rainy, blustery November 1. To all of you who are doing NaNoWriMo, best of luck. Have a fun time. If you feel all uptight and stressed out, maybe you want to take a little break and go listen to our last 5 episodes on how to relax and enjoy yourself. Yeah, that'd be a good idea. Don't let the pressure get to you. There's really no pressure when you think about it. In the grand scheme of things, there's no pressure. Today, we're talking about how to write realistic fight scenes and writing fight scenes in general. And we're going to be breaking all that down.
Yeah.
This is something that I think we're really passionate about.
I love writing fight scenes so much. I've talked about it on my channel before, but everyone knows how much I love writing fight scenes, which is funny because I feel like I don't really come across as a person who's I love fight scenes.
I feel like you also don't write them super often because of the genre you're writing. So I feel like you savor it a lot, whereas basically almost every day I'm writing a fight scene, writing fantasy. So an urban fantasy, sci-fi thriller type of stuff.
Yeah.
It's it comes up a lot.
If there's a fight scene in a contemporary that's a legit fight, you know something's really wrong.
Right. Because there were a few of those in 100 days.
Yeah. But they were cool. Mostly just for fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So whenever there's real conflict, it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, from both perspectives, it's kind of cool because
it is.
You have a lot of the high fantasy / superpowers and sci-fi elements in your fight scenes, whereas mine are usually more just fists.
Right, yeah, fist fighting.
Just fist fights.
Street fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there's definitely a real art to it. And you see you guys should hear us when me and Abby are watching films and there's fight scenes being that would happen. Oh, that punch would have that impact. That guy would be able to throw that hook from that. We get really really picky choosy because a lot of times fight scenes, especially in film, are so unrealistic.
Right. So we're taking this topic from the perspective of our own training in martial arts and learning more about it, which has really just completely changed the way I look at fight scenes. And I know it's changed the way you look at fight scenes too. 100%. And it makes them more enjoyable to write, I think, when you actually know some stuff about hand-to-hand combat. Mm-hmm. It makes it fun to write because you're not flying blind through it.
Yeah.
You actually know what terminology to use and you know how to write it in a way that's realistic. So
yeah.
We're going to bring some of that knowledge into today's episode.
Yeah, exactly. And for those of you who are curious, I've trained Shotokan karate for about 6 years and intermixed with some Qigong and stuff, which is lesser known, more Zen martial arts. And you've trained with me doing Shotokan for how many years have you?
I mean, we started around the same time, but I feel like you've done more as far as actually showing up to practices more diligently. But we've both, trained quite a bit over the past 5-6 years-ish.
Right.
So, yeah, collected quite a bit of knowledge along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially in self-defense and practical hand-to-hand combat in situations that you'd actually find yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
More so than competition style training. So I feel like that's helpful for the writing process because you're going to most likely be writing about different fight scene scenarios with all different types of characters from different walks of life and probably not writing a karate competition.
Right,
book.
exactly.
But maybe.
Yeah, if you're writing about UFC or something, it's probably going to be it's going to feel different than writing about, your character maybe in a fantasy book getting attacked in the woods, or someone in a contemporary book having getting into a confrontation on the street. It's going to feel different.
Right.
But I think that there's some basic principles for each one that can really help. The first one that comes to my mind immediately for books, you can tell me what you think because you read more. Pacing.
Yeah.
So many fights are so overly described.
You're seeing it in slow motion.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, you're seeing it really slowed down.
Yeah.
And no fight, especially from the first person, is ever going to feel like that.
Right. Yeah. And I talked about this a lot in my video on pacing and descriptions, about how pacing really is the length of time that it takes you to read something, because that's how fast you see it going by. So if you're going into these lengthy descriptions about what each person is doing and how they're moving and what kind of punches or kicks they're throwing, then we're going to be seeing it happening at the pace at which we read.
Right.
Which is going to be really slow and almost like slow motion if you're going into great detail about all of these things. And also with the detail of what is actually happening. So by that, I mean what kicks they're actually throwing, what punches they're actually throwing. Most of the time, especially like you said, if it's in first person and it's in a quick altercation between two people, you're not really going to be aware of what the other person is doing exactly, down to precise details. Like, oh, they just threw a roundhouse kick. Instead, you'd probably be like, I feel like a baseball bat just slammed into my ribs, you know?
Exactly.
You wouldn't be thinking about what was the technical detail of what they just did
because
to me.
What it does is it makes you feel completely detached from the action. You feel detached from the action because you're more like the narrator.
Yeah.
The disembodied narrator telling you what's happening to the character.
Yes.
Which, if that's the case, if that's how you're writing, then that's kind of a different thing. But if you're writing from a first person perspective, and you're like, oh, he, blisters me with a roundhouse kick, or,
right. There's no pain in that.
Yeah.
There's no feeling.
Right. Exactly. It's too technical, and it slows it down and makes you feel. Also, it's unrealistic because, and at least this is my personal opinion, doing karate for so long, when you're in, because I've been in and out of dojo environments. And you'll get tapped. You'll get hit a little bit, not in an aggressive way, but working with your partner, you're supposed to have some contact involved,
right? To
kind of get familiarized with that. And of course, you have gear on, so it's safe. But even with the gear on, sometimes we're like, oh wow, and you're kind of like, your brain is in a different mode because you're like, whoa, that that hurt a little bit. Oh my gosh, it puts you in a different mindset. That you're now thinking about that. So if someone really punched you, you're not going to be like, oh, and then I see his buddy out of the corner of my eye doing this and talking to that person, and I see this happen, and then he throws this technique followed by this technique.
Right.
All you're going to be thinking is, oh my God, my face hurts.
Yeah.
So it's like, it just feels, not that I'm saying the character can't notice any detail, but they would be noticing a lot less because this huge distraction of getting hit would have happened. And now all your attention is absorbed into, oh my gosh, survival mode. I just got hit in the face.
Right. Exactly.
Unless it's like a UFC fighter. Then maybe they're noticing everything else because they're so used to getting hit in the face. Otherwise, they're not going to be that used to it. That's something that's just... that has become so clear from doing martial arts is you're gonna fritz.
Right.
You're gonna be in a totally different mindset.
Which really is all about making your fight scenes character driven.
Yes.
In a way, because it all depends on who the character is.
Right.
Like you said, if they're a fighter, if they're used to getting hit, they're going to take a hit differently than somebody who's never been hit before.
Right.
It is shocking. And also there is the most important thing I think to remember is the F3 response, which is fight, flight, or freeze. And everybody has one. Everybody has one that you immediately go to when something really sudden happens to you, either whether it's a punch or whether it's even just some kind of confrontation or even somebody shoving you.
Right.
Could be, jarring. Startling. Yeah, jarring. Exactly.
To say the very least.
Yeah. So how does this character respond? I think that's like the most important question to ask yourself when you're starting to write a fight scene is who is this character and what is their F3 response based on who they are as a character.
Right.
Are they going to immediately go into fight mode and try to shove this person and punch this person back? Are they going to freeze, which a lot of people do?
Yeah.
Most people do.
A lot of people.
Or are they going to try to run away?
Right.
Like, what is their instinctual gut reaction? And figuring out what that is will really help you to write the whole scene in a way that feels smooth and realistic. Because if you have the character freeze up at first and then they suddenly become like a fight mode type of person, and then like halfway through they become a flee mode type of person, it's going to feel inconsistent and like jarring,
Right.
Like everybody has their own default response to like a physical confrontation like that.
Right.
So I think it's important to figure that out first, and then from there be like, okay, how would they respond to each thing that's going to get thrown at them?
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's so important because everyone's going to tackle it differently. Right. And that being said, once you have your character kicks in and now they're fighting in whatever scenario, and this can apply to if you're writing a like fist fight type of hand-to-hand combat, or if you're writing a sci-fi gunfight or something, is these and again this kind of tags on to pacing, but having lags between responses. Like, I punch him out and he falls down, and then all this stuff. Like, I see this so much, and even in film where it'll be like the character, catches their breath for a minute and takes a dramatic step back and then looks over their shoulder at, their love interest. And then you go back to the villain. They're still trying to get up. It never happens like that in real life.
One punch knockout.
Yeah, the one punch knockout. These lagging responses that are so unnatural for a real life scenario.
Yeah.
That I'm like, it wouldn't take that long for that guy to get back up. Right. And also this character is just like standing there with their hands in their pockets. First of all, you'd have so much adrenaline coursing through your veins. You wouldn't be like, oh, I'm just going to chill here for a minute. Like these just seem like really large lags in responses to things. It'd be more like, that character getting knocked down, scrambling to their feet. What is your character doing? They're trying to get away. And so when you have that action, it's like, ooh, what's next? You know what I mean? Right. Not like, okay, we're having a pause, now fighting, and then a pause, now fighting. A lot of books and movies do that with how they edit the film, because they'll go to like the response of the crowd and then the response of the love interest and then, then the guy standing there flipping his hair back. And it's like, no one has time for all that. This would be happening so much faster.
Right.
And instead we take time for all these responses.
Right.
And that's why like it's so refreshing to see a film that does like a very realistic fight scene, like at the end of Black Belt.
Yeah.
I think that's a really not very well known film.
Yeah.
But go look it up. Go look it up and watch it. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
End of that, some of the most realistic
that whole film really,
martial arts I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yes,
very realistic.
Very realistic fight scenes. And that being said, like the actual physical responses happening in your characters as they're fighting, they're going to be fatigued. They're going to be struggling to keep up their strength and their stamina throughout the fight scene. Okay, it's not just going to be like, oh, we have an endless amount of energy to just keep beating each other up. Like, you have to also take into consideration those factors, that like same with the how punching a person doesn't knock them out. Like, you have to also take into consideration like the different, if you're working with like human characters who don't have superhuman abilities, like take into consideration that they have human limitations as well. So they're going to be physically taxed by actually fighting. And that being said, I think it's also important to look at. One of the things that annoys me so much about the strong female character trope, that's like the over cliched strong female character, is that she can always like beat up the bad guys no matter how big or strong they are, because she's just a tough female character and she has like no limitations, because even though she's smaller and weaker, technically. And that just really annoys me, because it's like, you had a moment, you had this great opportunity to showcase how technique wins the fight, not strength.
Right.
And that's one of the things that you learn through training martial arts or any type of hand-to-hand combat. And it's so valuable to learn that, especially with self-defense training. Because if you know the right technique, you can control your opponent's body with very little strength and force. And I feel like that's a missed opportunity in a lot of books, a lot of movies that I see, that it's like the strong female characters just has like this superhuman strength and she can just like beat up these big dudes without like breaking a sweat.
Yeah.
It's just so dumb. It's unrealistic.
Right.
And to me, it's not empowering, because it's actually not, if you're like trying to make her like a role model for young women or women in general, it's actually not like helping them in any way, because if they actually tried to just like bulldoze a big guy, they couldn't do it. Like they would need to have specific techniques and know how to control their opponent with a technique rather than just brute force.
Right. That's the thing I think is so important whenever you're writing whatever character. If you're writing a character who's going up against someone way, way, way larger, then you have to take into consideration they aren't going to do well if they muscle their way through it.
Right. Because the other person will always out-muscle you.
Right. So if you're going up against someone way, way bigger, then you're going to have to call on more than strength.
Right.
To incorporate into the fight scene. It's going to have to be technique that's involved, which I think a lot of people, a lot of writers who do not have experience in martial arts get intimidated by writing technique, because where to even begin? You know what I mean? So I think that there are like one of the best things, if you're not going to try martial arts, which number one would be try martial arts. It will change how you write fight scenes. It will change how you write hand-to-hand combat.
And it will also help you in the real world.
It'll help you in the real world. It'll help you be more aware of your surroundings. It's a very empowering practice. It's very, there's so many elements to martial arts. It's such an ancient art form. It has so many benefits, but we could go on and on about that.
Yes.
But I think that if you're not going to try it, then watch it. Watch fight scenes. Not in real life. Don't go in real unless it's a competition, obviously. Don't seek out confrontations to see what happens. But like you can watch so many martial arts techniques on YouTube. There's amazing dojo channels that will upload.
Yeah, like real people fighting and teaching techniques, not like Hollywood does.
Right, not Hollywood fight.
I mean, there's a few that are good, but they're hard to find. I always hear people be like, oh, watch fight scenes in movies. I'm like, are you kidding?
Yeah, exactly. Because like, okay, watching last night, I watched for the first time the Snow White and the Huntsman 2, the Winter's War, whatever the heck it's called. There's like a fight scene in that's like the editing in it is so fast that you can barely really see what's happening. But there's like the main character especially is hit and thrown and has stuff smashed over his head so many times that I'm like, this character would be dead, first of all. He wouldn't, and then of course 2 seconds later, it's like wakes up from being unconscious and is like fully functioning, not a bruise on his face, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is so not what I'd be like. And I think that's important: is remember what happened in the fight. Where was the character injured? Were they hit over the head? Were they kicked in the ribs? Did they have their legs swept out from under them? Make notes as you're doing the fight scene. Okay, they're getting hit here. They're getting hit here. They got punched in the eye. So now, like, let's say they get knocked unconscious and they wake up. Where's the pain points? Where are the pain points going to be? Right. Because if you just have, I get up and brush myself off, just like every Marvel hero, It makes it feel like, that moment when the actor just wipes all the blood makeup off and now they're good to go. So that's what makes a fight scene feel fake, is when there's no actual aftermath.
There's no consequences.
It's like nothing. So it's just like fight after fight. And what happens after a while, and like I was noticing that you've been watching the movie, is it's like every fight scene, you don't really feel their pain anymore because they don't reflect any pain at all. It's just like, gets kicked in the ribs and like thrown across the front lawn. And then he gets right back up and starts fighting. So you're just like, that's not even painful.
Right.
You know what I mean? It stops triggering emotional response, and it's just kind of like watching like this really stimulating imagery. Do you know what I mean? It has no consequence. It's like no consequences following the action. So I think that's important, to have pain points, have struggle, and then afterwards, in the aftermath, make sure you're bringing in what are the pain points now, and look up, research. If they broke a rib, or even if they badly bruised something, it's going to take a long time to recover from. It's not going to be like, the next morning I feel all better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
especially if you're not used to getting beat up or hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Then it's going to be really like jarring, and it's going to be more painful for somebody who's not used to it. Than for somebody who's used to it. So that's another thing to take into consideration, is, and going back to like the character thing, like some characters will be more resilient than others. And it doesn't matter like, their size or anything like that. It has to do with just how used to getting hurt are you. And
when we say used to hurting yourself, we mean like in martial arts training, like getting bumps and bruises. Don't hurt yourself. But yeah, like I think that's absolutely true, because you're going to be more callous in a good. You're going to be more used to it. You're gonna have that thicker skin. You're gonna be like less. You're gonna be less sensitive. For sure.
Now, with something like techniques of like self-defense techniques that we've learned, like lockouts and manipulations and stuff like that, those get to be pretty intricate. That it's like, if you're going to have intricate things, I think, in a fight scene that you have to put a little bit more description into, then have that be like the focal point of how your character is going to get out of something. Like have that almost be like the punchline of the fight. Especially if they end up winning through this technique. Rather than like, you are using all these different lockouts and you're describing these complicated things.
Because you don't want the reader to be bogged down with like, what am I reading?
And even with a lot of these intricate lockouts, like, and techniques rather, don't even try to describe them the way that your sensei or your teacher or anybody on YouTube describes them. Try to describe them with as few words as possible in a very simple way that most people will understand. So like, for instance, in 100 Days of Sunlight, there's a scene with a special lockout that I really am fond of.
This one?
Yep.
That one right there.
That's the one. Which is grabbing a few fingers of a person's hand and essentially bending them backwards. And that's how I described it. Like, I could describe it with technical terms, but I tried to keep it as simple as possible. Just the very basic essentials of what you need quickly to piece together what's happening here. Same with things like chokes. Like, you don't want to get super intricate of like, where are your fingers going on the person's neck? Like, don't even go into any of that. Like, just go into what is the very basic essentials that you need to know of like what's happening between these characters. So as few words as possible so that you can know quickly, so that you can tell the reader quickly what's going on.
Otherwise, it's going to feel like they are watching it in slow motion moving by.
Yeah, exactly. And then they'll probably have to read the description over and over again to be like, okay, what are they doing?
And then your fight scene becomes boring, which is the very last thing you want your fight scene to be. You want it to be quick and punchy, literally
punchy.
Yeah, literally punchy and exciting to read.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a lot of good crash course in fight scenes from two martial artists / writers.
Yeah.
And like we said before, I mean, I highly recommend even just taking like a short self-defense course.
Yeah.
Is going to help you so much with writing fight scenes and also help you in the real world to just feel more confident and aware of your surroundings and just more confident in protecting yourself. And knowing these things can be really helpful in the real world, but also especially in writing. If you never use them in real life, that's a good thing, actually.
Yeah.
You will use them in writing. So it's a really, it's research.
Yeah, it is. It's great research and it's great fitness too. It's great for fitness, great workout.
Yeah.
Something you can do with, a buddy, a sibling, a bestie, a parent. It's a great thing to get involved in. Something that's awesome for someone of any age. It's one of those things that really has something to offer everybody.
Yeah.
But we hope you guys got something out of this. Comment below if you're watching on YouTube and tell us if you've written any fight scenes. What genre do you write? Is it like high fantasy fight scenes with dragons and swords and all that stuff? Or is it like, like sci-fi, space, combat?
Or rom-coms with occasional fist fights.
Rom-coms with occasional fist fights. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to know what you think. If you'd like to support the show, feel free to do so at
patreon.com/The Kate and Abbie Show.
And as always, it means a lot to us when you guys share each episode with a friend, with a writer bud that might need a little bit of inspiration in their day. And we hope you guys got something out of it. We'll see you in the next episode. Till then, stay stoked.
And rock on.